Subscriptions. Reject modernity, embrace tradition. This mimetic phrase has long troubled me with its hazy ambiguity. Although it speaks to my anachronistic heart, my love of bygone aesthetic beauty, and my tendency to view the past through rose-tinted glass, the message attached to these memes has always seemed incoherent and facile. This particular meme genre has been a motivation for young right-wingers disillusioned with the present, but the appeal to tradition brings to mind several questions that are rarely answered or discussed by thought leaders. Which traditions? From which time period? Whose traditions ours or the broader Western heritage? Why these and not the other ones discarded by history? Is it a true return or a modern reinvention? We can set aside these questions altogether, for the very notion of a return to tradition is an oxymoron in itself. Traditions form a living membrane that permeates our culture, evolving with each breath of time. There is nothing to return to, as we are already immersed in tradition's current flow. Those elements asynchronous with our era have faded into artifacts, no longer true traditions but relics of what once was. Real tradition is not the relic of a past that is irretrievably gone. It is a living force that anticipates and informs the present. Igor Stravinsky. Traditions cannot be plucked from the past to adorn the present like a feathered headdress. They live only through their breathing representatives, woven into the fabric of now. Traditions that have vanished are mere remnants, vestiges we may excavate and study, perhaps even restore, but to revive them without regard for continuity is a Sisyphean fool's errand. Right-wing appeals to tradition may inspire but falter in practice, blind to history's living pulse. Evola's perennialism. Evola weaves a mystical vision of tradition as a metaphysical perennial order, hierarchical, spiritual, rooted in ancient rites of divine kingship and heroic contemplation, binding humanity to transcendent truths. To those swayed by Jungian archetypes or Campbell's mythic cycles, this may resonate, a distant hope of encountering metaphysical clarity. Evolites birthed this meme, and the haze of their undefined tradition has let it drift untethered. The Evolites' occultist shadow of intent serves only to allure, but not illuminate. The Tradcaths cling to rituals they deem eternal traditions, though their faith has shifted across centuries. They seek to upend a church hierarchy that rejects their rebellion, led by voices excommunicated, stripped of dioceses, or sedevacantistrirally in communion with Rome. Their call to return ignores their tradition's evolution, mistaking rigid nostalgia for living devotion. Pagan Reconstructionists. Pagans chase ancestral ways with a deluded notion that they can restore lost rites through reconstruction. This is no tradition but renovatio in novum, a modern invention disguised in ancient garb and ultimately severed from the living thread of cultural continuity. Vague slogans. We also see the vaguest appeals, such as "redevant to tradition," which serves as nothing more than a slogan to rally around. Often superimposed on imagine that attempts to revive one's preferred lapsed tradition or defunct political movement. This discourse on tradition should be intolerable to anyone who sincerely yearns to weave these valuable relics of tradition into the living present. Alas, right-wing intellectual spaces remain fixated on mimetic philosophers, many offering little of true value for our achieving this in our modern paradigm. Do not despair, we can find a compelling defense of tradition in Paul Feyerabend, a philosopher of the left. Feyerabend, in his Farewell to Reason, begins his defense of tradition by attacking a sacred cow of our contemporary world, Galileo Galilei. Get 76% off for 1 year. Galileo, the destroyer of tradition. Galileo styled himself a supreme authority, insisting astronomical matters be left solely to astronomers, their knowledge imposed upon the public in forms they alone deemed fit. He did not seek to share his insights freely, but to dictate them technocratically, claiming his scientific methods as the sole path to truth and reality. Feyerabend rebukes this exaltation of the expert as a divinely appointed arbiter of knowledge. Galileo followed the tradition of Plato, who exalted super-expertise in direct contrast to Protagoras, who saw knowledge as democratized. The Church, contrary to contemporary narratives, did not oppose science and instead took a middle path. Astronomy and science in general was deemed important and worthwhile for study, explanatory for specific purposes but not exalted as the sole insight into reality, merely one aspect of truth. Feyerabend invokes Cardinal Bellarmino's famed yet oft-criticized letter, which illustrates the Church's measured stance. It seems to me that your reverence and Signor Galileo act prudently when you content yourselves with speaking hypothetically and not absolutely. To say that on the supposition of the Earth's movement and the Sun's quiescence all the celestial appearances are explained better than by the theory of eccentrics and epicycles is to speak with excellent good sense, and to run no risk whatsoever. Such a manner of speaking is enough for a mathematician. But to want to affirm that the sun, in very truth, is at the center of the universe, and only rotates on its axis without going from east to west, is a very dangerous attitude, and one calculated not only to arouse all scholastic philosophers and theologians, but also to injure our holy faith by contradicting scriptures. The cardinal concedes that Galileo's model may have advantages over others, but warns that problems emerge when it is presented as a truer depiction of reality seeking to usurp tradition. Science often faces this challenge, endorsing models that offer explanatory power in their time yet may become obsolete or, as in modern physics, irreconcilable. Feyerabend challenges us to examine the conflict between general relativity and quantum theory, questioning whether either can truly explain reality when they fundamentally contradict each other. Science continually seeks a broader domain to achieve coherence with reality, often turning to elementary particles as the foundation for this coherence. An ornithologist may study bird behavior but ultimately points to molecular biology as the basis for understanding biological life. Scientific theories are consistently measured against basic science, whether chemistry, botany, or rheology, reducing complex phenomena to the level of elementary particles. The Church recognized two broader domains, science and theology. Science encompassed Aristotelian theories of change and motion, mathematical principles, elemental theories, and reflections on the structure of the cosmos. Theology, in contrast, approached scientific matters through the lens of creation, rejecting the notion of a self-sufficient system. Feyerabend highlights that theology was a rigorous discipline, with entire chapters devoted to methodology, a depth of focus notably absent from modern physics textbooks. Galileo's vision of technocratic experts supplanting tradition has come to fruition. Today, the Church of Science imposes its doctrines on our cultural traditions, lacking the prudent wisdom once embodied by medieval cardinals. Reality then and now. In Homer's era, dreams were considered part of reality, but by Parmenides' time, reality was redefined as tangible things, distinct from appearances. Dreams, gods, and oracles were relegated to mere appearances, no longer deemed real. This shift ignited a competition among traditions, each vying to explain the nature of reality. In Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle defends non-Parmenidean entities, arguing that even if goodness is merely an appearance and not a tangible reality amenable to scientific categorization, it remains something humans strive to attain. In his discussions of the soul, he posits that psychological, material, and sociological perspectives, though yielding different conclusions, are all valid within their respective domains. Science seeks to sharply distinguish facts from values, but Feyerabend supports the Church's advocacy for a value-driven science. Reality encompasses more than the raw data of scientific inquiry. Galileo's challenge to the Church's astronomical views was not merely a scientific dispute, but a rejection of a living tradition's values, which provided psychological and sociological nourishment and shaped a reality aligned with people's beliefs. Under the Church of Science, the pursuit of knowledge is more constrained than it was for Galileo. The Catholic Church showed tolerance towards scientists and novel theories arising from new methodologies, provided they did not challenge tradition beyond the publication of their works. In contrast, the Church of Science enforces its authority through institutional power and stringent peer review standards, deeming what is acceptable and ostracizing those who commit the mortal sin of defying orthodoxy. By comparison, the Catholic Church approached knowledge with greater rationality than the zealous gatekeepers of today's scientific priesthood. Respecting tradition. In his letter, Bellarmino continues, "If there were any real proof that the sun is in the center of the universe, then we would have to proceed with great circumspection in interpreting passages of Scripture that appear to teach the contrary." Church doctrine, as a living tradition, remained open to a growing body of knowledge, but requires that new ideas be integrated with care into the fabric of established tradition. Tradition takes precedence, and novel concepts must prove themselves superior or at least equal to those that preceded them. Expert knowledge, rooted in narrow, specialized domains, has often supplanted a broader, humanitarian Christian perspective, leaving fragmentation in its wake and offering no meaningful value propositions for human concerns. It imposes scientific objectivism on the subjective reality of human experience, creating a disconnect between empirical facts and lived values. Traditionalists must emulate Bellarmino's wisdom rather than the patron saint of science, Galileo's brash defiance. In an era of evolving traditions, for better or worse, we must navigate the continuum of time thoughtfully. True traditionalism does not wield a wrecking ball against ideas deemed unworthy, but instead seeks to preserve and adapt tradition with discernment. Even Nietzsche, contrary to the radicalism often attributed to his name, supports this measured approach, opposing those who invoke his ideas to justify rebellious change. Moral codes that lay down laws are the principal means by which creative and profound individuals are able to mold mankind as they please. Provided that such artists of the highest order hold sway and can impose their creative will over long stretches of time in the form of legislation, religions, and customs. Nietzsche, Will to Power, section 957. The traditionalist both respects and safeguards living tradition against encroachment. When new values emerge or old ones are restored, this must be done with elegance. The task of the traditionalist. Those who find fault in the traditions of our times must engage with their claims thoughtfully and rigorously. While science and liberalism dominate the cultural landscape, their limitations become evident in areas where they fail to address humanity's deeper needs, from ethical dilemmas to existential fulfillment. In these spaces, ancient traditions can be revitalized or innovative ideas crafted anew. Yet their integration must unfold within the continuum of our culture, woven delicately into the existing tapestry rather than imposed through force or upheaval. By embracing Bellarmino's circumspection and Feyerabend's insights, we cultivate a harmonious evolution that values empirical progress without sacrificing the soul-sustaining wisdom of our heritage. Through this balanced pursuit, we preserve the richness of human experience and ensure that knowledge serves rather than subjugates the greater good. Let radicals pursue their causes, but we must not allow them to undermine the integrity of our language and its meaning. The traditionalist reflects carefully on the justification for challenging the living present. He embodies the spirit of Copernicus, not Galileo. The traditionalist is not a madman or an outcast, instead a figure rooted in his time. He creates and refines but never destroys. Tradition is never found in the past, but always in the present. Anatole France. Share. Get 76% off for 1 year.